Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Speak from the Heart, a testimonial podcast series where athletes can share their story behind their faith. I'm your host, Cole Reynolds, and today I have one of the third basemen in the Texas Rangers organization who just finished up his rookie year for the ACL Rangers this past season, Jack Wheeler. So, welcome to the show, man. I'm super glad that you're here.
Texas selects Jack Wheeler, a third baseman from Morris High School in Morris, Illinois.
Yeah, he's kind of interesting on the mound. It's a 6'5", 205 build. He's projectable. He's up to 92, 93 on the mound. Like you said, he's a two-way guy. There's some athleticism as well. Actually, I should say 94 on the mound as well. And it was interesting as a third baseman too. He can, got a slider and a changeup that needs some work, but shows some promise as well. And as you mentioned, committed to Illinois.
Yeah, so he's got two ways to go in multiple directions here, both personally and professionally. Again, congratulations.
Appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, so congrats on being drafted. That's unreal. Super amazing accomplishment, and you're living the dream. And I'm sure these past couple months have been awesome, and I'm sure life changing for you. And we'll get into all that in a second. But again, super awesome accomplishment to be playing professional baseball for an MLB organization. But we'll get into some background. Can you tell me a little about the earlier days in Morris, Illinois, just kind of growing up? How did baseball become such a big part in your life, and who are some of the people that helped you along the way?
Yeah, Morris is, it's a growing town now, but it's a smaller town, not far from Chicago, and as at a young age, it was really it's just basketball and baseball. Basketball is kind of like the first love, honestly. It was before baseball, and then just kind of growing up, we had one thing that was pretty cool in Illinois. We had middle school baseball, so like sixth through eighth grade. We had middle school baseball, and we were like one of the top middle school baseball programs in the state, which was, kind of small and funny, but it was fun to be around some very good baseball players. And, kind of being able to play with guys you're going to play in high school at a young age was huge. And Morris is a very big football town, and never played it growing up. And Morris is a very competitive town. Like they'll love you, when you're winning, but when you're not, maybe not so much, which is tough, especially for a young high school and
Yeah,
even middle school athlete, to always have to feel the need to perform. So I feel like with the pressure stuff now, I've always kind of been used to it, needing to perform and play my best at every single game, whether it's baseball, basketball, football. But obviously at a young age, having middle school basketball and middle school baseball and stuff, and it was more of the connections, the brotherhood that we built was huge. That led to our future success in other sports and in high school. But I think the biggest thing was my parents definitely guided me. They're definitely hard on me. My mom was more so hard on me when it came to off the field stuff, especially my faith. And my dad was kind of there for the athletic stuff and also off the field stuff too. They both preached that very much, and I feel like that's a big reason why I am here today with this success on and off the field. But I feel that just having some like two very amazing perennial guides at such a young age definitely helped me become, more of a mature man, especially at a young age at 18, 19 years old when most aren't. I feel like that was definitely kind of a head start that I kind of had, especially started from a young age. So yeah, it's kind of the biggest thing there with the younger stuff.
yeah, I think it's big on your parents' impact. I
Yeah.
think, you were very. We learn from our environment and the people that are there to guide us. And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I was also lucky to have people that were hard on me. My dad was very hard on me growing up, but in a good way. And I really
Yeah.
needed it. It toughened me up, and it made me, the person and player that I am today. And my mom was always there too. She wanted to push me. I tried basketball, and she was a basketball player in college. She went to UNC Charlotte.
Oh,
So
really?
she was tough on me, and I wasn't good enough to play basketball growing up, and so I would get really mad. Yeah, you played baseball, basketball, and football. Three
Yeah.
sports. Can you tell me a little bit about like how was also playing like multiple sports affected you and shaped you?
Yeah, like I said, it was only baseball and basketball up until high school. Eighth grade summer rolled around, and football kind of started in early June. And I missed of a huge travel summer. Going to high school. bigger stuff now, college recruiting, all that kind of stuff. Um, and I saw all my buddies were playing football, and I was like, growing up in a big football town, we had an athletic group. I was like, why not? Yeah, obviously it's another sport for a chance at injury or risk of injury, but I said, why not? Because you only get one shot to be a high school athlete. And I feel like that's nowadays a lot of the top baseball players, don't even bother picking up any other sports. But I viewed it like Nick Saban's huge on you only got one shot to be a high school athlete. And I said, I kind of took that and I'm so glad I did. Football ended up becoming, a big part of my life. We won a lot of games, had some fun and some big games, big ones and big losses too, but a lot of lessons learned. But it was tough, like I would have the football season and it starts all in the summer, and it's overlapping with football practices and then flying down to Georgia or Florida and then even having summer basketball too for the high school. So that was tough. Um, but it definitely shaped me into the athlete I am today. And I feel like playing those other sports definitely all molded into baseball and they all helped out with baseball at some point. And I think like the biggest thing with that is kind of like, you know, football would let you overlap and we would have zero practices going into basketball season. And we'd have a football game. I think we lost a couple times in the semifinals, and our first basketball game was literally the next Monday, and it was Saturday when we
Wow.
lost. So there,
Yeah.
we would have like a shoot around Sunday and have our first basketball game Monday without a single practice because all the football guys played basketball too, and
Yeah.
we're all with each other at basketball practice or football practice, and there'd be like three guys at basketball practice. So like, and that was tough. And then basically have, basketball season all the way up till mid late February, and then baseball season's a week later. And I wasn't actually the only one. I had three or four other buddies that played all three sports with me too, and they got to experience that 4 year, 12 season chaotic journey. But we wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world. I know they wouldn't either.
Yeah.
At times it definitely sucked having, you know, basketball practice and thinking about I got 3 hours of baseball and some homework later that night. But that only made me, a tougher guy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of all it was. And even the athletic part of it, um, just basketball stuff and football stuff, like little things, all shaped into like speed stuff for baseball and kind of like the agility stuff because I'm a 6'5", 210-pound guy and I'm playing shortstop. You like wouldn't see it very often, but the athletic ability in other sports and being able to play multiple sports only helps you at the end of the day. And I got very lucky. I didn't even have the slightest bruise, in 12 seasons of, four football, four basketball, or four baseball. And I got very lucky because I had plenty of guys that, best friends tear both ACLs and
Yeah.
tear their UCL and a shoulder. And I'd never had like the slightest thing. And I always, I always gave thanks to God for that because, they would always ask, they'd be like, why would it happen to me the first, second time? And and even one time a buddy was like, well, you haven't even, nothing's ever happened to you. And I said, I know I'm, very lucky to have that. So that definitely was like the greatest gift, from God to not have a single injury,
Yeah.
in 4 years of, nonstop, go, go, go. So, and still to this day, knock on wood. So, hopefully that continues on. But that the multiple sports at the end of the day, my message to younger guys, it only helps. I know there's the greater risk of injury and whatnot, and sacrifice time. But at the end of the day, you only get one shot, so you might as well.
Yeah. And on the other side of that, if you don't do it, then you regret or like always
Yeah.
wonder, which is where I am kind of at. I always was interested in. I was so set on playing baseball. I committed to Eastern Kentucky after my freshman year. So I mean, once I had that in my mind, I was like, "There's no shot. Like I'm not going to do anything else, and
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
want to get hurt." But man, you only get one shot at it, like you said, and
Yeah.
I didn't take it. So I agree. Give it give it a chance, give it your shot if you have that opportunity, because you never get it back.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree. What made you choose baseball out of the three?
It was just it was kind of one of those things where I felt like it was always the most fun. I had the most joy around it. I mean, so did the other two sports too, but I always kind of knew like it was kind of like the sport that my dad was definitely into the most too with me. And I always appreciated that and I always liked it the most. I watched it the most. I thought about it the most. when I wasn't playing it, even when I was. So, and even during like hoop season and football season, I missed the baseball, and
Yep.
I kind of knew that it was going to be baseball. I played it the longest. And actually, football rolls around in high school, and I kind of, started getting interest in some big schools in football, future maybe tight end or receiver, and even got an offer from Ball State in football. And, there could have been, potential, maybe five, six more offers in football if I said, those coaches would come in during school and they'd be like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I committed to Illinois as a freshman for baseball before I even stepped on a high school baseball field. And I said, I don't know. And then there was a possibility at one point playing both at Illinois. And then it's just kind of one of those things where I knew baseball was always going to be it. I realized, especially my senior year too, during high school baseball, with all this, 20, 30 scouts there, and just kind of like, I loved it the most. I knew it was going to be baseball, especially when the pro stuff kind of to come into play, like junior spring and junior summer. So that's when I knew I was like, okay, it's going to be baseball, and ride it out with baseball and just solely on that. So
Yeah. And you just mentioned that you were committed to Illinois even before you got on a high school field.
yeah.
Division One baseball, like at the highest level. So, I mean, how did you handle that pressure and those expectations, especially since you committed so early?
Yeah, I mean, that was just one of those things where, like, I mean, right when I committed, my dad was like, "Look, you're gonna have a lot of, weight on your shoulders, especially at young age, a young kid at the, freshman level. You're gonna be expected to perform, not just from, like PBR and PG kind of like outlet stuff, like, just from like your hometown and even your own teammates and your own coaches. You're gonna be expected to, perform." And actually, the first two games of my high school career, I was on the sophomore team, and I remember like some of the other players were like, why is Division One commit, on a sophomore baseball team? And at the time, our high school was mediocre. We were like 500 and kind of sitting below 500. When I was going into high school, and it was kind of one of those things where I think my, who I love to death is a great mentor now, our head high school coach for varsity, was kind of see how I would respond to being put on the JV team and sophomore team at it right away. And I had no issue with that because a lot of my, best friends were on there, and I'm not going to react. It's not my decision, to say whether I'm on what team or not. It's out of my control. So, I think that was also a blessing in disguise to, humble myself at a young age too. But I think the pressure, I definitely saw that too. Like I would have not have, a so-so or, subpar game, my freshman year. And I would definitely hear it from sometimes even my own teammates, but also the other team too. But I also just said, look, block out the noise, just play the game you know how to play, and just perform, to the best ability you can. But also have, the right mindset and positive attitude as well, and being a good teammate at the end of the day. So I think just acting like the pressure is not even there. I mean, it obviously is there, but you kind of just have to block out the noise and just put your head down and work as hard as you can and just try to 1% better every single day.
Yeah. And that slow kind of grind and like mindset toward, just get better every day. Like you don't have to be everything all at once today.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a process. I think that was problem something that I struggled with. I knew that eyes were going to be on me, and I knew that I was expected more of because you're going to play Division One baseball, and that was something that kind of bothered me throughout high school, is because I knew that I knew that I was looked at a different perspective and a higher expectation, and so if I didn't perform great, then I had a little bit of identity crisis. I felt like I was a little bit of an imposter, which
Yeah,
is something that's hard to work through, and it's something that I think, like you said, I mean, blocking out, like that's kind of the only way. You just go play the game. It's
right.
it's like
Yeah,
it's not there. Like so what? You just move
yeah,
on if you
absolutely.
don't do well. And I think that's something that I wish I would have learned earlier on, because I was extremely hard on myself, and wanted to do the best that I could, but honestly expected success every time. Which we play a game that's very
Yeah,
much embraced around failure.
yeah,
Uh, I mean, 3 out of 10 times you succeed, you're a Hall of Famer, and I'm pretty sure you've heard this a lot. You've heard that a lot too, but
yeah, absolutely.
that's just what it is, man. That's the sport
Yeah,
we play, and it took me a very long time to realize that. And you're 19 years old, but you learned it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So That's awesome, man. You're way ahead of the game. Uh,
Yes, sir.
so the Rangers selected you in the sixth round. You're the 175th pick overall. That's pretty special. I mean, and you're living the dream. I'm sure it's been a dream of yours ever since you started playing ball.
Yeah.
Walk me through that moment and what you felt and what it was like when you finally heard your name being called.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a surreal feeling. I feel like it was like it's kind of like one of those moments where like all the hard work finally really paid off. I said that quote. I kind of said that to my dad, and then he's already like, look, on to the next, right? Now the real work's starting to really begin. And I always kind of stuck with me, like, yeah, like a huge, arguably one of the biggest milestones I wanted to complete in my life just happened, but I'm already on to like the next thing. I'm grateful for that opportunity and blessed to be in that, position that God gave me. But also now it's like now it's time to work. Time
Yeah,
really now it's I got a job. At the end of the day, it's baseball is my job, and now it's time to really keep that job, and just perform at the highest level, with the ability that God gave me. And you know, I mean, it was the most surreal feeling, and it was trying to just. I mean, I took that day, the rest of the day, and the next day just to celebrate and just enjoy that because I knew less than a week from that day I was flying out to Arizona. I was gonna be home for 2.5 months, 3 months, and just training every day and playing games. So I knew that I had to really just enjoy the moment though. Obviously I was already ready to literally just fly out the next day and get after it, right? But I also, my parents told me to really, soak it all in, enjoy the moment. It's only happened once. So I really made sure that I enjoyed that with my teammates, my coaches, my friends, and kind of the town of Morris, because at the end of the day, they were always rooting me on, through the good and bad. They were always there,
yeah,
regardless how, whatever the, the situation was, and whatever sport it was, they were always there and had my back. So what, I had such a great support group here. So I knew I had to, give it all back. And in every interview, I always kind of mention them too, my coaches and peers, because at the end of the day, I wouldn't be here without them. Obviously, even though I was the one putting in that kind of work for that, and saying those prayers by myself at night for the opportunity, and I was, you only saw my name on the screen. A lot more went into that than just myself, and
yeah,
I feel like I had that ability to kind of realize that at a young age that it wasn't just about me. And I was obviously grateful for the Rangers organization because they were at about 90% of my games. I kind of always figured it was going to be them. And they have such an amazing organization. And I've met so much has happened the past 3, 4 months of my life. It's crazy. I feel like something awesome happens every day. And I couldn't be more thankful for that. But, it's all, I realize it's all part of God's plan, regardless whether it's good or bad. And it's just I couldn't have asked for a better organization to be picked by because I mean I've not only changed and have grown as a baseball player 1,000 times than I ever have been, but also a better man too at the end of the day, which is
yeah,
really all that matters. So
yeah. That's cool. And I think when I reached out to you, the thing that stood out to me, it wasn't that you were a professional baseball player that was on the Rangers. I think it was how you were very outwardly spoken and open hearted about your faith, as a
yeah,
professional baseball player. And majority of the time, like you just said, I mean, it's a job. It becomes so much of a job that you're just kind of solely focused on baseball, baseball, baseball.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, like how has your faith impacted you as an athlete and as a person?
yeah. I mean, I think we have like 10 mental performance coaches out with the Rangers, and it's awesome. They're all amazing people. And actually, we were leaving. It's called Instructional League. It's the last kind of like fall thing that pro teams do in the month of September. And it was a final day. We were supposed to leave the day before. All us high school guys who hadn't been, away from home that long wanted to go see, girlfriends, family members, and, just the guys back home. And even I was one of those guys. I'm just like, look, let's get this meeting over with. Let's go play this game, even though it's got pushed back a day. Like, or I just want to, fly home later today. But, I really, my dad was like, look, bear down, listen to what you need to do, finish the job because I had a really, really, really big fall and turned some heads. And, one of our coaches said, baseball is what you do and not who you are. And I think that's, that stuck with me. That's one of my favorite quotes. kind of like my favorite lines I love to kind of repeat and tell other people and live by because, everybody's told, baseball is done. Whether some people are told at 18, some people are told at 40. Yeah, I'd love to be one of those guys, be told at 40, but at the end of the day, baseball is not going to last forever. It's really not. Um, so I think the biggest thing for me was I realized, having a important relationship with Christ and being a true God-fearing man at the end of the day is way more important than the game of baseball. And if I can really incorporate that outside of baseball and inside of baseball all the time, then that's the best I can do. And just really make sure and I can, be, a good future husband, a good future father and a true God-fearing man to other people around. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. Obviously I don't want to be known as just a, professional baseball player. I want to be known as just a true, good man. And I think that's, they have small, hidden things in each message that we would always, get on our whiteboard out there in our, pre-game meetings or pre-practice meetings at the beginning of the day in the morning. And I feel like all of them, they're just trying to make us better men at the end of the day. I mean, obviously, they make a huge investment in you by giving you a large sum of money at a young age to play baseball, but they're also trying to make sure that they're developing good young men, that not only can be seen by the media outside in from people, but also just, I feel like a lot of guys that I played with, they're very, very big in their faith. And, obviously, in the game of baseball, you're going to need God by your side because it's like you said, it's not an easy game. It's very hard. And especially a lot of minor league guys, I haven't played a full season yet. But I obviously will this upcoming spring. They say, it gets lonely at times and it's just you at the end of the day, whether you had a good or bad day. And when it's a bad day, it's you're really at a low. And they say there's only one guy to turn to, and that's the man upstairs. And I just think that's they having him by your side is the most important thing in life. It triumphs over baseball, everything. And I think that if I can really, really, improve my walk with Christ at a young age, I can't imagine how strong it can be when, the day, my baseball career comes to an end and life, prevails and continues on without baseball. So I think that's learning that. I mean, the man I am now is completely different than the man I got when I got drafted. So I think that's just improving, 1%, just small steps each and every day, small victories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just, climbing the ladder and just, getting better each day, whether it comes to better in my body, but also more importantly, better in my faith and my walk with Christ. So I think that's overall the most important thing in life. That nothing more greater than that.
Yeah, and I think it's become such a cliche. You're so much more. You're so much more than your sport, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of young athletes hear that and like, "Yep, got it," and then they're back to just like, "Oh my gosh, I
Right.
suck today. Like I suck," and just it becomes such a mental block almost. So like you hear it and you don't really understand it, and you just continue to move forward, and you don't really like take that in and really use that for the next opportunity that you get whenever you're playing your sport. I was one of those kids. I was one of those people. I would hear that like, you're so much more than baseball. And then I would just continue to make it my idol and make it
Yeah.
thing that was important to me and everything that was about anything special that I was.
Right.
But yeah, you are so much more than your sport. And I mean that
Absolutely.
so sincerely, so serious, and take it like you already have, but anyone listening, take it to heart. It's such a real thing.
Absolutely.
It's and the biggest thing about it is when you realize that you're so much more than your sport, then the failure that comes with it isn't as big. It's not insurmountable. It's something
Yeah.
that you can control and something you can actually learn from.
Right.
Which, like what you said, I mean, you're so much more than your sport. You want to be a father, a husband one day, and I'm the same way. So yeah, it's important to know your goals with it, but also understand that you want to be the best at it, but it's not everything.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
even though it's your job, it's just a kid's game. And Alex Bregman
Yeah.
says it all the time. It's just a kid's game. I'm hitting a stick with a ball, or I'm hitting a ball with a stick. So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
all it is.
That's true.
Um,
100%.
so how was your adjustment going from high school to the minors? You know, I know you've only been there for 4 months now. You were
Yeah.
activated in August, right?
Yeah.
So kind of tell me, how did you lean on God throughout these past 4 months of being activated since August, and just kind of that adjustment period?
I mean, I lean on him for everything. I think the toughest thing was definitely, it being such a quick turnaround. Getting drafted, and then a week later you're out in Arizona with guys you've never met before. You know, and staff you've never met before and whatnot, and now you're playing it as a job, and it's first day, we got there, and then the next morning, we're getting after it. And I think I just asked, I asked God for guidance, and I knew that I'm here for a reason, and He put me here for a reason, and he gives his toughest soldiers toughest battles, right? And I think that's I mean, it was tough, being away from home right away, but I also, knew that this is what I wanted to do. I prayed for this, so much, and every morning, every night, and every moment in between. And I think that was, and I, got so close to the guys so quickly, and not just just the new draft guys, the 18, 19, 20 of us, but also every even the rehab guys that were there, because when we got there, the low A, high A, double A guys, all them out there, they were all out there playing at the affiliates, and it was just kind of the rehab guys and then the new draft guys. And then some of the ACL guys. And I think like the bonds and relationships that we have, because at the end of the day, we're all, obviously we're baseball players, but we leave a complex. We're just regular dudes. And I feel like the three of my roommates, Josh Owens, Jay McQueen, and Gavin Feen, not only some of the best baseball players in the country, but also just the best of dudes. And I could name so many more guys, like AJ Russell and Paxton Kling. Some of those guys are just some of the best dudes. But I just like the biggest adjustment was just, I feel like with the game of baseball, it was definitely the pitching. It was like I've never seen, 90 plus mile an hour sliders in my life. No matter, I mean, I faced some of the best travel ball pitchers in the country at a young age, but no kid had that.
Mhm.
And I think, my first 4 or 5 games, I maybe had a hard ground ball. That was it. And it was tough because I'm like, I go from succeeding so much to, now it's way more failure than it is success. And I remember I was kind of sitting there on the bench, like, man, like I don't like this is tough. Like, I don't know. Like, this is the pitching that I'm gonna see every day. And I kind of was doubting myself, and I was at a low. And I remember Paxton Clean was in the dugout. He was about to get sent out to affiliate, but he was still there, kind of doing for some medical stuff. And he helped me out big time. He kind of saw that I was kind of like, a little bit down. He was a national champion at LSU and then transferred to Penn State and was a great hitter there. And he kind of told me like, look, dude, like it's gonna be tough. Obviously, like he obviously went to college and faced some of the best pitchers in the country, so he's a little more used to it. But he told me like, look, you just gotta, ask God for guidance. And yeah, I know that, he's like, I kind of said something like, well, he's not gonna make the pitching any easier. He's like, I know that, but he's gonna give you those more challenges, to make you not only a better hitter, but a better baseball player and a better man. And I think Paxton, he's made me, you know he's helped me out so much, not just the game baseball, but outside of it, and more importantly, life. And I'll always be grateful for him and so many other guys. But I remember like him telling me that, and I kind of just like I said, I was kind of pressing too much in the box too, and pressing even in the infield, just kind of like, just it was so tight. And I realized, and I kind of started looking around, and these guys are just so calm and relaxed. Like, look, like failure is gonna happen, just let it be. And I feel like then after that, I mean, I went on just a hot streak. I swear I was, 1, 2, 3 hits a game for the next month and a half, and ended up finishing my first, kind of like semi season batting over 300. And I didn't think in the first 4 games, if you looked at me, you'd be like, this kid might not get a hit all fall.
Mm.
And then, just something clicks, and, and that obviously it was, mechanical stuff. And it wasn't even like stuff like that. It was just mental approach. I just was trying to do too much. And I think once I told myself, like, look, just, let it happen, let it be, and just be the player you can be. Cause, I'm like, all right, look, I'm here for a reason. They picked me for a reason. So I'm gonna, they gave, a big investment. So I'm gonna make sure that investment's proved right. And I feel like I definitely turned a lot of heads when it came to, like news reporters and stuff like that. I saw some cool articles or whatever. But at the end of the day, like that stuff really doesn't mean a whole lot. And it doesn't mean anything at all. And it's just like I think even at my lowest points, I would, ask God for guidance. And when something good or bad happens, like I would thank him for a good and bad day at the plate or a
Yeah.
bad game. I'd pray before the game, and then after the game, I'd pray to him and say, like, I thank you for just giving me an opportunity to play today, because I feel like at first, out there in the first couple of games, a bad game, I'd be like, I'd just be upset about it, and I would carry that off the field. And then something clicked one day, like, look, once I leave that field, I leave a good or bad performance behind, and I become the regular dude I am.
Yeah.
When we go back to apartments and do whatever, golf or whatever, and hang out, I just leave that performance behind. I'm not going to let that, I'm not going to carry that bad or good performance on and, determine my happiness or mood for the day. I'm just not going to let that happen. And I feel like that's like the most important lesson. That thing, it's hard. It's easier said than done. It took me a while to really get it down.
Yeah.
But I think like just that, having the big adjustments, like it was also, I feel like the game of baseball is like, it's also like the game of life too. And I feel like I've become such a more, mature young man because of it. And I think like, I'm so glad I decided to, sign with the Rangers, because I feel like I wouldn't, be the true young, like true God-fearing man I am right now. And I'm very mature for my age at 19 years old. Maybe if I go to college, I'm not the same guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, who knows? Only God knows that. And I think that I asked, for the true guidance, and he gave me that guidance. And I feel that the adjustment was made. And I feel like that was because of him. And I feel like that was the guidance from him. I feel like at the end of the day, it was the greatest gift. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. This is the sense of community that you have already
yeah,
with your guys. My dad told me that I kind of was just like, yeah, I got it. But he was like, those guys, like, get to know your teammates, because those are the
absolutely.
dudes you go to war with every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that those people that you lean on are so important. I didn't really do a good job of that my freshman fall. I was very like, I would go home on the weekends, and I wouldn't really develop those connections. And once the spring rolled around, I wasn't like extremely close. As close as, I was close with some people, but not as close as I needed to be. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, those people that you lean on, just either how they mentally, like their mental approach to things, or maybe how they mechanically look or physically look. I think it's those dudes are important to lean on, and they help you get better as a person and as a player. I think
absolutely.
the most I improved as a player was I would watch the guys that have been there for. I mean, there was a dude that was there. His name was Logan Thomason. He was there. He was there for 5 years at EKU. He was the shortstop, and just his mannerisms, like even after his failure, how smooth he was in the field, and just continuing to just take it step by step. I mean, he's been through the failure of it. He knows his mental process to just move on, and next pitch, next play. That I learned a lot, both mechanically and mentally, and then having to actually apply it is a whole different story. I mean, I was out of baseball for 2 years, and then I went to IU Southeast, and having to actually apply it was hard, because you're just
Yeah,
learning. And but yeah, man, I would also take it back to the apartment with me, and any failure, any bad game,
yeah,
and I would be. It's such a hard thing, because it matters to you so much.
absolutely.
You don't want to not care necessarily, but
Right. Yeah.
it matters to you. It's important to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, whenever I would go back, I'd bring it home, and I
Yeah.
got probably 30 games, 30, 40 games. I mean, we're probably at the back end of the year, and I'm just like, all right, I'm done taking it home with me. It's probably a little bit too
Yeah.
late, but it's okay. I mean, at
Better
least
late
I
than
learned
never.
it at some point.
Right.
But yeah, that's huge. But yeah, that was a super important learning point in my career, and it's good
Yeah.
that you're learning it now, because that, trust me, man. I'm sure that you already know, but there's going to be times where you're like, how do you hit a baseball?
Yeah. No. Yeah. For
Yeah. So I
sure.
mean, you're seeing it. You're seeing it firsthand, and you've been through it, and that's just the way it is. We go through
Absolutely.
slumps and we struggle, but it's always important to just keep going. And there's always the next day. So
Right.
yeah, man. So you're a two-way player. I was looking up, just doing a little research on you, and I saw your draft video, and the woman that was just basically kind of giving your player profile. He's like, yeah, it's a two-way player. He's like 94, 95. I'm like, what? And so, when did you start to realize you could two way at the next level? And do you prefer pitching or hitting more? And how did you kind of become a two way player?
Yeah, it's actually funny in that draft video. It was like only about pitching. And actually, like the Rangers wanted nothing to do with my pitching, which was actually crazy. So I'm just shortstop slash third, and obviously a hitter. Um, but the two way stuff, like I was always pitched and always hit. And at a young age, I always threw. It was kind of just like fastballs, like kind of a little harder than everybody else and whatever, this and that. But I always liked hitting more. I always liked hitting more. Um, Playing the field, yeah, it was whatever. I wish I could just pitch and just hit. Like those are the two like most fun things to do, right? Um, but I think like kind of like I was obviously blessed to play on one of the the better travel organizations in the country, with a lot of world renowned guys and whatever, and just kind of like seventh and eighth grade, like even playing in some like big time PBR and PGA tournaments. Like I was always kind of seeing like they'd see me pitch, and then the next day I would do well at the plate or in the infield or whatever, and kind of go into some events too. Kind of young age, kind of sparked the okay, I could be like a legit two way guy. And then high school, I just wrote it out. Always two way, and like it was tough, like pitch one day. Freshman year, I didn't really pitch a whole lot. I definitely did pitch a good amount. Probably about like maybe 30, 40 innings. And then sophomore year through senior year kind of just ramped up. Junior didn't have to really pitch a whole lot. I kind of got to save that arm, which was nice because then junior summer was like the PG National and like big time circuits, and it kind of saved my arm. I'm glad I did. I'm glad that's the way it turned out because I was able to do two way at all those events.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, maybe if I throw 100 innings in the school ball, I probably can't two way at those events and be able to showcase the ability to do both. Kind of helped me jump up in the rankings, stuff like that, which really doesn't, means absolutely nothing in the day. But it was kind of like one of those things I like to see and, kind of strive for. Um, and I always enjoy doing as much as I can on the baseball field, which is always nice. And always, if the more you can do, the more positions you play, like the higher chance you're gonna have to play. They're gonna have to, put you somewhere,
Yeah.
and Illinois, the plan was gonna, I think, to be a two way, and I think that was like, I mean, I think with my ability that I had and the skill set I had, I'm like, and then losing a good amount of guys, like I'm like, okay, like there's a chance like I could be, like a legit two way college like freshman kind of guy, and like some of my goals I had if I did go to college, I'm like, I want to be like Big Ten freshman of the year or stuff like that, and being a two way guy and excelling at both, like how could you not get that award? But at the end of the day, like I was like, okay, but if two way net pro ball, that's a whole nother level of like you
Mhm.
got to be an absolute beast. And they were, I think like let's just say like down the road hitting starts to fall off a little bit. Like the Rangers are like, look, you have the ability to pitch here too, so like that's pretty cool to be able to have that. And even some teams, in the draft prospects, I think like the Phillies and the Dodgers and Marlins, they wanted me to be a pitcher, and I kind of was like, I don't know if I want to be a pitcher. And it's funny, I was kind of being like ungrateful in those moments. I say I don't even want to play for a major league team if they pick me because I didn't want to be a pitcher. Like some guys would just claw for legit being like the last pick of the draft and doing whatever. They would play right field if they never played right field before. So that's why I tell myself, I'm like, all right, whether it happens, I'm gonna be grateful for whatever it is. So then, but I always wanted, I knew I was going to be probably, I always strive to really make that, that jump in hitting to kind of really, really like tone down like the best mechanics and work with the best and be around the best to be like a legit hitter. I
Yeah.
think like with my frame at, 6'5", 210, 215, like how could you not see a big hard righty thrower pitcher? But also some teams are like, how could you like, I move so well and have, a 6'3" speed 6'3" 60 at the height and weight I have. How can I not play short and be a home run gap to gap 30 and 30 kind of guy, 30 homers, 30 steals guy, like eventually in the big leagues. So I think just having that athletic ability from all those other sports and just being a God gifted abilities, like I could kind of play right field one day and left the next, and first, for weekend series and third or short. Like I just that's why having those athletic abilities and those God
Yeah.
gifted talents, and then building off those God gifted talents, definitely was like the separator. And they'll if you're and then at the end of the day, like if you're hitting, you'll be in the lineup. Like that's all that really matters at the end of the day. So that's why I really toned down in the hitting, and then everything will come else with it. So
Yeah. What made you pick Illinois? Other than I mean, you were from Illinois, so I mean, other than that, like,
yeah.
did the university itself speak to you? Did the coaching staff make you want to go there? Just kind of run me through. I should ask this earlier, but run me through kind of your recruitment process and how you decided to commit there.
Yeah. I kind of, it was one of the first schools. I think it was the first phone call I ever had was them, like 3 days for my first year, freshman year in August. And I had a lot of family members go to Illinois. It's 2 hours legit straight south on this one road to get there to Champaign. And I always grew up an Illinois fan. So was my, mom and dad, they're, big Illinois fans. Um, and I think like I was always, going to sporting events at a young age and always loved Illinois. I kind of like that hometown hero kind of thing, even though it's Champagne's 2 hours south of, where I lived. It's still kind of like the same
Yeah.
vibe, and everybody loves Illinois. There's a lot of Notre Dame fans in Illinois for no reason. I don't know why. I can't really. I'm a hard Roman Catholic myself, but I just can't stand Notre Dame. Um, but that was actually one of the schools. But I would consider that because how could you not, want to go to a school like Notre Dame as well? That was one of the schools I consider, getting the best of both worlds.
Mhm.
A a degree you could literally do anything with. It's the University of Notre Dame, and then you're focusing on your religion, your faith is huge too. But Illinois was it, and I was the first kid they offered, and I think that was pretty cool. And it was one of those schools where like Coach Hartlip had been there, for 30 years. Like they didn't have, and even their assistant coach, Coach Chris, was an amazing guy. I still talk to this day. Like their coaching, they didn't have like in today's world, it's crazy with the transfer portal and coaching changes. Guys just really care for money and there's no loyalty anymore. And I feel like Hartlib, started at Illinois and he's going to retire in 3 years with Illinois. And I feel like loyalty is like the biggest thing to me. And, when it comes to relationships and just, the game of baseball and the game of life. And I feel like I saw a big time loyalty there. And I just think like, and I think it was kind of like the coaches and the staff matter more to me than just the brand. I feel like if I waited like a couple more months or even a year later, I could have gone to an Auburn or an Alabama or a Florida State kind of thing like that. But then they like, yeah, it's cool. I'm going to, a top 10 team in the country if I went there. But like, you know, I would have to be asking myself, is their coach even going to be there in 3 years? Or, you know what I mean? Kind of stuff like that. I didn't have to ask those questions to Illinois. And I feel like, you know, I was one of their highest ranked recruits they had in history. And I feel like that was like, but it's just a loyalty thing though. And I feel like I felt that there. And I was also, Illinois is a very, very good school. So I was getting the best of both worlds. Like I said, it's, baseball's going to end at some point. So, you know, getting a good education there, but also playing the game I love is, you can't, doesn't get much better than that. Right. So obviously now I'm just playing the game I love. I don't have to worry about school, but I mean, so that's pretty cool to have that. But at the end of the day, though, I mean, Illinois felt like the right fit. And never once, thought about decommitting. I was committed there for almost 4 years. So I feel like and that's the biggest thing for me. Like I had a really, really big junior summer and schools like, UCLA and Auburn, Alabama are like, look, tell my coach who had so many connections, like, look, if he decommits, you could, have a spot here. But I decided like, I've been committed here for so long, might as well just keep riding it out, right? And then
Yeah.
sign with them. I signed with them in November of my senior year. So I felt like, if they were loyal to me, why not be loyal back to them? So that was like the biggest thing for me. So
Yeah, that's huge. I think it's so important in now's realm of baseball with the portal. I mean, players leave every year.
yeah,
Tens of thousands of players in the portal, and I feel like sometimes, in some instances, coaches leave just as much as players do, and
yeah, absolutely.
they
Yeah.
find the next job. And because I mean, I got recruited by a coach that wasn't even there once I got to EKU. So I mean, it's really cool that you had that loyalty and that just that connection of knowing that you're going to have a place and you have these people that genuinely care for you and have that tradition of success in caring and also one of the best teams in the Big Ten. So
Right. Yeah,
it's really really
absolutely.
cool opportunity for sure.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'll
100%.
leave you. I'll leave you with this. Is there a verse or a prayer, maybe like a piece of advice or piece of wisdom that you carry with you in all areas of your life, such as sports, school, and beyond? I guess not school anymore, but sports and
Yeah,
beyond, to remind you like to trust in God's plan for your life.
absolutely. I mean, I said one of the things I live by earlier, like the baseball is what I do, not who I am. That's obviously like the biggest thing I live by, and kind of broke that down earlier. But one of the verses is Proverbs 27, 17, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. I feel like that's and actually in our Rangers complex, walking into this amazing, giant weight room we have, it's in fine big print right up in the front, painted on to the wall. And I mean, there's another example of how, those guys are incorporating, faith and religion into, the game of baseball. And I feel like, you know, you kind of who you are who you surround yourself with. And I realize, you surround yourself with guys that are, better than you and, you're going to become one of them too. You're not going to, I see some guys that surround themselves with guys that are better at that just so they can feel at the top, but it's not going to make them any better at the end of the day. And I feel, my roommates that I live with, those guys are just as good of dudes off the field than they are baseball players. And if I'm going to surround myself with, great guys that are big into their faith that I can have conversations about, we can have Bible studies and Bible talk like we would, and be able to rely on each other, and not just on the baseball field, but in the game of life. We text each other and call each other every day, in the off season. And one lives in Mississippi, one lives in Tennessee, one lives in California. And we still feel just as connected, as we do, when we're with each other in the same apartment. And I feel like, you know, you only like we make each other better in so many different aspects of life. And I feel like we push each other at the end of the day in baseball. But also we push each other just as much as off the field with the stuff that's just as important with our faith and, and just becoming better men. And I feel like they're a huge, huge, huge part of why I'm a lot better man than I was, 4 months ago when I got drafted. And I feel like I've met so many people in the past 4 months. Um, boys and girls that have made such a positive impact on my faith. Um, and I feel like, you surround yourself with, amazing people, you're going to become one too if you're already not one, but you're only just going to get better at the end of the day. And I met, somebody that, who really really sparked my relationship with Christ. He was always like there with me. Obviously I grew up in a hard Catholic family and a very church going family, and we talked about it a lot, and praying before our meals and saying grace and whatnot. But I know I prayed before my games and stuff too, but I wasn't really he was there, with me, but I wasn't, as invested as him. And I feel like this person really, really, really kind of sparked my relationship with Christ and kind of told me like, I need to, get better with him and right with him. And it's only gonna, before you be in a relationship with somebody else, you got to have, a good relationship with Christ first. And I feel like that definitely sparked, I mean, this happened about a month and a half ago, but I feel like, regardless of whether they're in my life or not anymore, I'll always be grateful for that, because how could you not be grateful for someone sparking a stronger, relationship with Christ and a better walk with Christ? So, I'll always be grateful for that at the end of the day, whether they're in my life again or not in the future. But I just, sometimes, sometimes question things with Christ, even though, I'd be like kind of why it happened and, why things happen. But it's also, good and at the end of the day, the good and bad things that happen, those events are just also they're just lessons learned. And, kind of back to that, verse, it's just like, you surround yourself with amazing, great, obviously they're going to be great baseball players, they're professional baseball players, but there wasn't one guy I met out there that wasn't a good dude, that I wouldn't want to surround myself with. And I feel like, those are the type of guys I want to be around. And, like in 2 days, Thursday and Friday, I'm heading up to, the city to work out with, guys like Michael Massey, who plays for the Royals, and a bunch of other big leaguers, and working with this, the guy who founded Trotsky Baseball. And working with them is at a young age. I mean, these guys are 24, 25-year-old big leaguers. Then I'm just like the young rookie, but I'm gonna learn so much in those 48 hours, 2 days of working out with them, than I ever will in my life. And
Yeah.
and those guys are all good dudes. They're in the group chat already talking about the background of the guy we're gonna be working with, who's arguably the best baseball infield coach in the world. And I mean, that's gonna like I'll just be saying so many prayers and giving thanks to God that I'm be able to have the opportunity to work with them and be asked to to go to this this 5-6 guy event, and
Yeah.
work and get to work. And then I'll definitely bring my notebook, jotting everything down because I mean, taking with the infield drills will do and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I'll just be, grateful for opportunity to just become, better,
Yeah,
just a little bit better. I know we'll probably only be 8 hours of work, in those 2 days, but in those 8 hours, I'll learn more than I've ever learned. So I'll definitely, kind of see how you said earlier, like the mannerisms of your teammates and seeing how they act, see like, if they miss a ground ball, they're not going to be, pouting about it. They're going to be like, all right, learn, fix what they just, the mistake they made and on to the next one. So,
yeah,
and it kind of just goes back to, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Like that's exactly what's going to be happening the next, 2 days. So it's going to be awesome to learn from them and, just become a better baseball player, but also, a better dude at the end of the day. So
yeah,
can be more grateful for that.
yeah. It's cool that you mentioned Trotsky. My dad has showed me videos. I mean, we've sat down and watched this stuff, man. That's super cool that you're actually getting to experience one on one with them. I mean,
Yeah,
majority of what our infield drills, the things that we work on, are about, and he's one of the best, and so that's a super cool
absolutely.
opportunity.
Yeah,
But going back to iron sharpens iron, I also I made a video a little bit ago, but just put it simply, it was if you hang around bums, you'll be a bum, and if you hang around winners, you'll be a winner, and that's so
absolutely.
true. And the people
Yeah,
that you're with, I mean, they're there for a reason, like so
yeah.
I'm sure you're just around just winners now. Yeah,
That's what I try to do. Yeah.
yeah, and it's super cool that you get this opportunity, and that's all I got, man. But if you got anything else to say to wrap us up, um, if you got something else to say to the people, you got the floor.
Yeah, I just think at the end of the day, like you just said, you surround yourself with winners, you'll become one. And I know it's not all about the only thing you bring in the afterlife with Christ is just, the relationship that you built with him. All these materials, like you may see, any young baseball player watching this, you may see the cool things that guys have, like nice cars, the nice shoes or whatever. But at the end of the day, those guys don't even really care about that, though. It's not about, the nice things. You're not, all those things are just, they're materialistic things. You don't, they're pointless at the end of the day. It's nice
Yeah,
to have those things. It's nice to be lavish and live that cool lifestyle. But at the end of the day, like, we're all just, human beings and, just regular old baseball players and just, regular guys. And I think, if you can, you know, if you can really strengthen your walk with Christ and I have a good following on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and I realized one day, if I'm gonna, put stuff out there, I want it to be positive on, whether it's about Christ or not, I just want it to be positive and make an impact, especially in the young kids, in my town and surrounding areas that follow, me on stuff like that. I think if I can put out positive things, positive things will come back. Whether they come back to me or not, I don't really care. I mean, it's just putting out those positive things at the end of the day is really all that matters. And regardless of whether it's a bad day or not, give thanks to Him, give thanks to Christ because you woke up. That's nothing's guaranteed in life. And
right.
He gave you another day on this beautiful earth, and you might as well take advantage of it, right? And just put a smile on your face, whether it's a good or bad day. It may be tough to do. It's easier said than done, but just kind of live life with him. And at the end of the day, things happen for a reason because of him. So just all you can do is put your head down and work as hard as you can and leave the rest up to him. So that's all I
Yeah,
got.
you're exactly right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I wish you the very best of luck in the future, and I'm sure there's going to be multiple people that are following you after this to follow your journey, and I sure will. So, but yeah, I appreciate you doing this, man. It was really cool experience to get to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Cole. It was a pleasure meeting you, brother, and hearing about your story. And I'll be following you as well. I can't wait to hear all about it. I'll catch up with you sometime too. But yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you, man. I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you all for watching, and come back next week for the next episode.